Some of the footage I used in this video comes from today's sponsor, Storyblocks. It's unlimited access to over 1 million stock videos, songs, and more, all in one subscription. More on that later. After the tears and screams, fields of bones were left buried in silence. The butcher of Baghdad, Hulagu Khan, has left this land. His eye is fixed on Syria. The Sultan of Aleppo and Damascus, al-Nasir Yusuf, has failed to go to Hulagu and the Mongols in submission. Mongol envoys now go to him with a warning: destroy your fortresses and submit to the great Khan in the east, or suffer his wrath. Some in the Sultan's court favor surrender, but the Sultan believes his cities can weather a siege. One commander called Baybars beseeches the Sultan to rally his armies to meet the Mongols in the field. His eyes silvered by a cataract, this hardened warrior from Egypt warns that walls will not avail against the Mongols. The Sultan disregards him, and so Baybars gathers his followers and leaves Syria to its doom. Death arrives in early 1260. The Mongols breached the walls of Aleppo within a week. From the high citadel, the defenders are forced to watch the massacre of their people. The garrison holds out for weeks before surrendering. Another fortress in the region also relinquishes the fight, and it is written, "They came down under amnesty, but Hulagu Khan was extremely angry with them and ordered them killed at once, along with their wives and children." Al-Nasir has fled, and Damascus surrenders without resistance. Mongol-appointed administrators promptly establish control over Syrian cities, thereby uprooting the last of the Ayyubid dynasty. Only a decade before, the Islamic Ayyubids had triumphed over the Crusaders in the ongoing war for the Holy Land, capturing and holding for ransom the French king Louis IX. Amidst the glow of victory, the Ayyubids were ousted from Egypt, overthrown by their elite slave soldiers called the Mamluks, who in turn set about fighting amongst each other for power. Baybars, himself a distinguished Mamluk, had fled for his life as his rivals seized control. Now he returns to make peace with his nemesis, the Mamluk Sultan of Egypt, Qutuz. If the winds of war are brewing on the horizon, Baybars will not flee again. As a boy, he and his tribe, native to the western steppe, fled the swords of invaders. Taking refuge in the Crimean Peninsula, his people were attacked by a regional warlord. Many were killed. Baybars was sold into slavery. In time, he was brought to Egypt, where he was sharpened, raised to fight as a Mamluk. The invaders who displaced his people so long ago were the Mongols. And now, envoys arrive in Cairo with a message from Hulagu Khan. From the King of Kings of East and West, the Supreme Khan, let Qutuz know that we are the soldiers of God on earth, that he created us in his anger. Commit your fate to us before the veil is torn, for we will not be touched by tears. You have heard that we have purified the earth of the disorders which defiled it, and that we have slaughtered most of the inhabitants. It's up to you to flee. What land will offer you refuge? Which road can save you? Your prayers to God against us will not be heeded. Hurry to give us an answer before the flames of war are ignited, and its sparks are cast upon you. He advises Qutuz to warn his people. Say to Egypt, Hulagu has come, with swords unsheathed and sharp. The mightiest of her people will become humble. He will send their children to join the aged in death. Qutuz has the 4 Mongol envoys publicly cut in half. He hangs their heads from Bab Zuela, the southern gate of Cairo, and the army rides out for war. Hulagu has moved to cooler pastures in the north with the main army, and the recent death of the great Khan Manka will further divert his attention from the front. He has left only around 10,000 Mongols in the region, under the command of his general, Kitbuka. camped across Palestine, the land held holy by Jews, Christians, and Muslims. The Mongols have pillaged and made little effort to establish control. But word of the Mamluk advance reaches Kitbuka, and he rallies his warriors. Qutuz and the Muslim Mamluk army meanwhile make camp outside the crusader city of Acre, avowed adversaries of Islam. Some Christians, the Georgians, Armenians, and more recently the ruler of Antioch and Tripoli, have submitted and taken to fighting alongside their Mongol overlords. Kitbuka himself is a Christian, but the Franks here in Acre refuse to throw in their lot with the ruthless Mongols. The Crusaders send out supplies to the Mamluks, a stifled show of support. Riding ahead, Baybars has located the Mongol force not far from a spring called Ain Jalut. And as twilight gives way to dawn over the hills of southeastern Galilee, the Mamluk army beholds the Mongols. Although joined by auxiliary troops including Bedouins and Syrians, the core Mamluks are men who are sold as boys, raised in Islam, and relentlessly drilled to be professional warriors adept in horse archery and melee, often clad in mail and lamellar armor along with their horses. Across the plain, Mongol heavy troops menace in elaborate armor, either native to Mongolia or pillaged along the warpath. Yet the standard Mongol warriors ride light, with little to no armor. They've known horsemanship, archery, and war since infancy. Personal reserve horses grant them inexhaustible mobility on the battlefield. First blood is drawn by the Mongols. Heavy cavalry smashes into the Mamluk line, followed by a terrible burst of arrows. Mamluks fall all around. Qutuz feels the fear in his men. He shouts for them to hold position, to fight for Islam, and to answer with a charge of their own. In the course of battle, an Ayyubid prince serving on the Mongol left deserts with his troops. The Mamluks likely swarm this open edge, and the Mongol horde becomes entrenched in a bloody melee. Warriors in the eye of the storm tear each other apart with swords, axes, and spears. Horse archers exchange kills on the edges, and at length, the Mongols begin to crumble. Some leap from their mounts for a last stand. General Kitbuka is overrun, and his head is taken as a trophy by Qutuz. Baybars hunts the remaining fleeing Mongols and slaughters many in the hills. When the Mamluks find Mongols hiding in a field of reeds, they set the field on fire. Word of the defeat at Ain Jalut echoes across the land. Mongol officials in Syria abandon conquered cities, and the Mamluks overtake them. Qutuz then rides south to return to Egypt. He had deposed the previous sultan and taken the throne less than a year prior, and before then his allies had slain the companions of Baybars. An account overseen by Baybars himself recounts the journey home. Baybars had already made arrangements with a small group of his followers. Riding beside Qutuz and talking with him, he suddenly seized his hand and his sword, and then drew back from him and struck at him. The result was his death and removal, as had been decreed by God. What Baybars did, he did himself. Touting his victory at Ain Jalut and his triumph over Qutuz, Baybars receives the support of Egyptian commanders and becomes the Sultan of Egypt. The distant Hulagu Khan does not think Ain Jalut a crushing defeat, but a prelude to vengeance. His massive army is untouched and eager for battle, but animosities have grown between Hulagu and another Mongol prince to his north, Berka. Disputes over sovereignty and land have been further inflamed by Berka's prior conversion to Islam and consequent desire to punish Hulagu for his massacre of Baghdad and its caliph. The empire has begun to fracture into distinct khanates. A Mongol civil war to establish a new great Khan rages on in the east, and now war erupts between Hulagu and Berka. When Baybars learns of this, he shrewdly forges an alliance with the fellow Muslim Berka and his Golden Horde Khanate, whereby Berka permits the ongoing slave trade from his lands to Egypt, which serves as the lifeblood of the Mamluk army. Engaged on two fronts, Hulagu seeks his own allies. In a letter to King Louis IX of France, the Mongol prince boasts that he massacred Baghdad and Aleppo, and that he captured al-Nasir Yusuf, and suspicious of his loyalty, had the man's head stuck atop a gate in Tabriz. These attempts at European-Mongol alliances survive Hulagu's death in 1265. His son Abaka succeeds him as head of this ill khanate. He marries the illegitimate daughter of the Byzantine Emperor Michael VIII, and later threatens Baybars, reminding the former slave, "You are a Mamluk who was bought in Siwas. How do you rebel against the kings of the earth?" And so, when Lord Edward of England leads a crusade in 1271, Abaka answers his call for aid. He sends 10,000 Mongols to pillage Syria, yet Crusader-Mongol efforts toward alliance rarely amount to effective cooperation. Baybars emerges with his army to find the Mongols have already returned north. He clashes with the Crusaders and by some accounts sends a Nizari Ismaili assassin to kill the future King Edward. The agent stabs Edward, possibly with a poisoned dagger. Edward kills the assailant but decides to abandon the crusade. Such are the means of survival in a web of Islamic, Christian, and Mongol interests, complicated by internecine divisions. The Mongol promise of revenge still looms, and in 1277, nearly 2 decades after the fateful battle at Ain Jalut, Baybars musters the Mamluk army and takes up his sword once more. The Sultan's visage betrays long years of war. The journey north feels more labored than it once did. Trekking through sand and mountains, the Mamluks stop to camp in the moonlit hills near Elbistan, Mongol territory. The Mongols gather in a nearby valley and inaugurate the day of battle with a vengeful onslaught. The Mamluk left cracks, men fall mangled by arrows. Baybars hastens to reinforce the flank and shouts for a counterattack. The outnumbered Mongols cannot stem the Mamluk tide. The Mamluks cover them in blades and arrows. A tapestry of Mongol dead spreads thick over the whole plain. In the days following, the elation of victory is heightened by the Islamic holiday of Eid. But Baybars forbids his men to play celebratory drums, lamenting, "How can I rejoice? I had believed that if 10,000 horsemen of my army were to meet 30,000 Mongols, I would defeat them. But I met 7,000 Mongols with all my army. The Mongols aroused panic and my army lost heart. Without Allah's grace, they would have defeated us." Baybars dies later that year. Ain Jalut represented a halt to the Mongol advance, but it had been the cunning Baybars who held the line thereafter and built a fearsome Mamluk army. 4 years after his death, a massive Mongol army invades Syria and the Mamluks vanquish them. Notwithstanding one major defeat in 1299, the Mamluks continue to thwart further Mongol conquest in the region. The Mongols engaged many worthy opponents on the remote edges of their empire, including the Knights of Europe, Samurai of Japan, and the Mamluks of Egypt. But even costly offensives did not break the Mongol horde. The greatest enemies, the ultimate undoing of the Mongol Empire, are the Mongols themselves. Civil wars draw the mighty armies ever more inward. The very avarice, brutality, and claims to power that built the empire turn the Khans against each other. The vision of unending conquest, dreamt by the long-dead Genghis Khan, fades. Years ago, in the midst of his civil war against Hulagu, Berka Khan wandered through cold heaps of Mongol dead and lamented, "Mongols are killed by Mongol swords. If we were united, then we would have conquered all of the world." The footage of Mongolia you're looking at right now and several clips in this video came from Storyblocks. Seriously, if you do anything creative or for a business, this is a great deal, and I found it to be a massive time saver. I love that at one set price subscription cost, Storyblocks gives you unlimited downloads of professional content to use anywhere, royalty-free forever. Expensive pay-by-the-clip pricing can force you to balance creativity with cost. Instead, Storyblocks gives you access to a seemingly endless catalog of HD stock footage, templates, images, and sound effects you can download at any time. And whether or not you have experience animating, you can really spruce up your projects with sleek motion graphics and titles that work easily with editing programs like After Effects, Premiere Pro, and Apple Motion. To get started with unlimited stock media downloads at one set price, head to storyblocks.com/historydose or just click the link in the description.